That game is happening on Sports Extra 2 right now. But here, and we're back for more, by the way, before lunch, don't worry, but we're going to change sports right now. Of course, it's a big weekend of 5 Live Formula 1 over in Imola, and it's time for practice 3 there, of course. So let's immediately, straight away, go from South London to Imola and say a very good Saturday morning to Ben Edwards. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Kevin. Thank you very much. Great to hear from you. And we are looking forward to FP3 getting underway very shortly now. The weather looking actually very, very good in Italy today, with the wind backing off a little bit and the temperature raising just up a bit into the early 20s still. So, yeah, I'm Ben Edwards. Alongside me is Mark Priestley, former mechanic for the F1 McLaren team, working with some of the very top drivers that McLaren were running when they were winning championships before. And now they're definitely still looking to win championships. And that is possible this year. Also joining us, F1 correspondent for BBC Sport, Andrew Benson. Mark, we're looking forward to FP3 getting underway. It was certainly a good day for McLaren yesterday. First and second fastest in both of the practice sessions. Going into today, very important, because we've got the final practice session coming up and qualifying at this lovely Imola circuit, which is a circuit that has a lot of history to it, but that has a lot of challenges and is very difficult on which to overtake. Qualifying today is going to matter hugely.
Yeah, it really is. It's one of the bigger qualifying sessions of the year for all of those reasons, that you want to get yourself in the best position possible for the race, because that overtaking is so challenging on Sunday. Likely to be a one-stop race on Sunday, which limits the amount of strategy you can employ to make up places. So it's all about fighting on track, and the opportunities are few and far between. So today, the third and final practice session is really going to be all about gearing up, getting the car in the best position and window possible to deliver that ultimate performance over one single lap.
That's a very good point. We've got the softest tyre that we've seen from Pirelli coming here at Imola. It'll also be used at Monaco next week as well. And in fact, it worked pretty well yesterday. There's no doubt that it will be the tyre to use in qualifying, but not in the race itself. And as you said, one stop is still likely here, although just hearing a little bit of news from some of the teams, I mean, a two-stop's not impossible, because they've gone softer this year again. It's not impossible that a two-stop race might possibly work.
Well, I think the issue, Ben, is the long pit stop time, 27-28 seconds, because the pit lane's long. That pushes the teams towards the one stop, and the C6 tyre that you were talking about has proved to be actually quite durable. More to the point, the C5, which was the soft last year and is the medium this year, although the tyres have been improved from one year to the next, that was looking like it could do a proper first, not confirmed yet, but it's looking like it can do a proper first stint distance. So the teams will definitely be wanting to do a one-stop, and it looks like the tyres will make it work. So I think what we'll see is them managing it, because the issue is the two-stop might be slightly quicker on paper, but you can't overtake at Imola very easily. So you can lose that time gain very quickly if you get stuck in traffic.
Absolutely, totally agree with that. There was earlier in the week a chance of rain on Sunday. It's looking less likely now. It's a very slow percentage possibility of rain either today or on Sunday. So it does look as though we're going to be in for a dry running throughout today and tomorrow. Charles Leclerc is just about to jump on board the Ferrari, and of course for Ferrari this is a significant place to be at Imola, the track nearest the Ferrari manufacturer, and with the massive number of supporters and fans here at Imola this weekend, they will be really pushing for both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton to deliver some strong results. It's been a long time since a Ferrari has won here at Imola, but we'll have to wait and see, because McLaren are still looking to be the dominant force. Lando Norris just getting ready to come out now.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's sort of building pressure at Ferrari, I think. There's always pressure at Ferrari, but that pressure's growing. They've got Lewis Hamilton having joined the team this year. They've made the big decision to let go of Carlos Sainz, who was, you know, in everybody's minds, I think, a really strong Ferrari driver. They brought in Lewis Hamilton, obviously the greatest of all time when it comes to the numbers associated, but he's struggled so far in the short period he's had, and let's give him that credit. It's only a short period of time. He's struggled to get to grips with this Ferrari yet, and certainly to get the best out of it. And he's also joining at a time when the Ferrari car for 2025 just isn't quite in that sweet spot that he really needs it to be, him and Charles Leclerc, to be able to take it to the McLaren. So we are expecting that McLaren will once again be favourites, but I think when it comes to qualifying, we saw glimpses yesterday that the likes of George Russell. You can never rule out Max Verstappen, and even Pierre Gasly in Alpine was up in third yesterday, so let's see what he can do.
Yeah, no, he's done well here in the past, actually, Pierre Gasly. That third place was impressive. He qualified fourth here in 2020, qualified fifth and finished seventh in 2021. The last 2 years haven't been quite so good for Gasly, but it is a track, I think you're right, that does suit Pierre Gasly extremely well. So that will be interesting to see whether Alpine can get some points, perhaps. And of course, remember that the second driver at Alpine this time, Franco Colapinto, getting his first chance back in Formula One, having driven for Williams last year, and now coming back out, having replaced Jack Doohan at the Alpine team. So he is teammate to Pierre Gasly. The lights have gone green at the end of the pit lane, and you're beginning to hear the F1 engines firing up now, as Lando Norris is going to be one of the first to go out onto the circuit. Just the one victory so far, of course, for Lando Norris, up against his teammate, who will be looking for 4 wins in a row, his 5th win total this year. So for Lando, this is really important. He was second fastest to Piastri in both sessions yesterday, and yet there were certain sectors where he did seem to have the edge.
Yeah, and there was nothing between them, really, was it? It was a couple of hundredths of a second, really, at the end of the qualifying simulation runs. That was all that split them. But it was Piastri who was quickest. And, you know, when it comes to qualifying, as it has done all season and will continue to do, a quarter of a second is enough, isn't it? It's getting yourself onto the front row, and it's that intra-team battle between the two McLaren drivers that may, as the season rolls on, prove to be a really intriguing battle. They do look like the dominant force in the pit lane right now. We're yet to see, and there is a long way to go in this championship, but we're yet to see if anyone's going to be able to sustain a proper championship challenge up against them, or is it going to come down to one of those two papaya cars? And who is it going to be? Because the psychology amongst that, the sort of competitive nature of those two, the dynamic within the team itself, there's so many questions that still need answering, and I think it's going to be fascinating to watch it play out.
It will be very, very interesting. We're getting some lovely views around this Imola circuit, northern central Italy, 20 miles southeast of Bologna, and this particular track is just 3 miles, just over a fraction over 3 miles long, 19 turns with some famous names as well. We're just seeing a bit of text up on our screens at the moment, showing how between Australia and Miami, the previous 6 races, how McLaren have had the edge. Mercedes been shown as second in the group, ahead of Red Bull Racing, interestingly, even though Verstappen, of course, has delivered some remarkable performances every now and then.
Yeah, graphics like this, you always have to take with a slight pinch of salt. It's talking about the difference, the car performance difference between the first race and the last race in Miami, and what the graphic is suggesting is that Red Bull Racing have dropped down by just over 1/10 of a second. This is their sort of average lap time performance, versus Mercedes, who've stepped up by a similar amount. It's so circuit dependent. We've got such a small sample set of races, with only 6 so far in this long championship, that I would certainly hesitate to take too much into that. But it is interesting, and I think what's going to continue to be interesting over this season is that performance is going to ebb and flow at different racetracks, between different teams, and even between different drivers in teams, as things like temperatures rise and fall. We get different types of circuits, the asphalt that the tyres run over, the different tyres that are going to get used at different racetracks as well. All of these little tiny tweaks that seem small can actually make a significant difference to the performance swing up and down the grid.
Interesting noise coming from inside the, I think it's inside...
That's a carbon fibre grinder, that is.
Right.
It's a familiar sound of someone grinding a new component that's been put on the car overnight that didn't quite fit. That's what that is.
Well, they seem to be doing that to Max Verstappen's car at the moment. He was standing well back from behind the car at the moment. That's where the noise that you heard was coming from.
Spent 10 years hearing that sound every Saturday morning.
I bet you did. I bet you did when you were working for McLaren. Yes, it's a very loud sound. There's not a lot of action out on track immediately. A lot of them are just sitting and waiting at this stage, aren't they, before heading out onto the track. Presumably they've got to think about the tyre use today, saving the soft tyres for qualifying, but they will very much be for qualifying, will be into medium and hard tyres for the race. The hard tyres in some ways will be the most important, so they're all saving the hard tyres. We haven't seen them run at all so far this weekend. Yeah,
which is fairly normal. They only get a very small number of those. The challenge they've got today is because they had the C6 tyre, this new softest tyre, for the first time yesterday. There was a lot of usage of that tyre on the Friday. They all had to learn about it to understand how it was going to perform, and therefore they probably did a few more laps than they would normally do out of their soft tyre allocation on the Friday. But of course this session really is all about gearing up for qualifying, on which they will need to use those soft tyres. So there's a limited amount they will be able to do, just purely, as you say, because of the amount of rubber they've got left available to them. And that's why I think there's some hesitation. No one wants to go out too early. Yes, they've done some work on the cars. We've seen Lando Norris go out and do a sort of installation lap, which is really just to check the car's been apart overnight and then put back together. It's to make sure that all the systems are working, there's no leaks, everything's running as it should. But he's now safely tucked up back in the garage, waiting alongside everyone else.
Might also have been to scrub those hard tyres for the race. Some teams like to scrub the tyres for one lap. I think the engineers don't even know whether there's a science behind it, whether it really makes a difference or not, but some teams lean one way, some teams lean another, whether they prefer new or scrubbed for a race, so it could just have been that too. You're right about the very softest tyre allocation, of course, Mark, you are, because if you're looking down the list of the front-running teams, they've all got 5 sets of soft tyres left from now, and of course, if they want to do one qualifying simulation run in this session, which they will at the end of it, that only leaves 4 for 3 sessions of qualifying. So that means that we're going to see lots of usage of used tyres at various points in qualifying, because that's not enough to use. What you would normally have is 5 sets for qualifying. Still not enough to do 2 runs, of course, in each session, but it is enough, especially if you're quick, to have sufficient tyres. But this is a slightly reduced allocation because of the usage yesterday. So we're going to see, I think, a lot of the starts of the second and third sessions may well see the used tyres before they go onto the new tyres. But that's some time away from now, obviously, as we see Lance Stroll coming out into the circuit in the Aston Martin. Worth mentioning about them, by the way, they had some quite significant upgrades on the car yesterday, although Stroll was using them, not Fernando Alonso, his teammate, for a back-to-back comparison. Stroll was not, I wouldn't say disparaging, but not exactly enthusiastic about them. He said the car felt the same, which isn't great.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, both cars have got those upgrades on them for the rest of the weekend. So good chance for us to see whether Aston Martin have made some progress at last.
Well, we would like to see them make some progress, because they haven't really done a great deal this year so far. George Russell is not in the car just yet. As you say, Lance Stroll is out there. He's actually on a set of hards, which, as I was saying, we haven't seen that be used much. Alonso, sorry, as well. He's out there. He's on the set of hards. Of course, he raced at the San Marino version of the Imola race when it was back in the early 2000s, and he had a very significant victory here against Michael Schumacher one time, when Michael had qualified badly down in 13th place, fought his way up, got past a lot of cars, but not the leader, and there was a battle right to the end, which Alonso held on to. Yeah,
it's regarded as one of Alonso's greatest victories. Now, I know we said that overtaking is difficult at Imola. Of course, it was still back then, because that was on the reconfigured circuit, after which they changed after Senna's death and Ratzenberger's death in 94. They put chicanes at Tamburello and Villeneuve. But what this backstory to that race that Alonso won in 2005, holding off Schumacher, was that his engine was down to 9 cylinders out of 10, and so he had a very significant power disadvantage. And I think Renault didn't even know whether it was going to make the end of the race, and so it was one of those drives. Mark, were you a mechanic for McLaren at that point?
You were in the big championship fight with Alonso that year.
So it was one of those races that I think every now and again, this was obviously relatively early in Alonso's career. I think it was his 3rd full season, 3rd or 4th. The great drivers put in drives that everyone goes, oh wow, that's really something special, and that was one of them for Alonso.
It was, no, absolutely, and of course he went on to take the title that year, didn't he? So yeah, impressive for Alonso at Imola, but it's been a while since he's had such a strong result. We're watching Lewis Hamilton out on track at the moment in the Ferrari, so getting plenty of support from the fans, of course, and he's heading through the first couple of chicanes through the Variante Tamburello, and then Variante Villeneuve, the second chicane, which is actually pretty rapid, and then it's heavy braking down into the tight left-hander at Tosa, where you're really climbing up the hill. It's hard on the throttle up here, and then that really balanced part that's coming up through Piratella and down through Acqua Minerale with lots of height change here.
It's a shame in a way about Imola that they had to make the changes that they did, because it went from being one of the circuits that was best for racing up until 1994 to one of the circuits that was worst, because you had that long drag. They've taken out the final chicane, which used to be called the Variante Bassa, which was just before before the pits. In fact, there were 2 chicanes there, a very, very fast one leading into a very, very slow one. And in fact, the fast one was where Rubens Barrichello had the first of the very serious accidents that weekend in 1994. Anyway, you had that long stretch from past the pits through Tamburello, which was flat out, usually, then through Villeneuve into Tosa. And Tosa was a great overtaking spot because the drivers were arriving there at such high speed. There was slipstreaming. There was all sorts of incredible footage and things that happened there. Do you remember once in 1990, Nigel Mansell actually spun his Ferrari at full speed behind Gerhard Berger's McLaren and kept going? That was one of those wow moments, goodness me. But then the chicanes that they put in, I remember through the 90s, early 90s, people were saying, it's a little bit dangerous, maybe they should think about doing something, but they always said they couldn't do anything because the Santerno River runs behind the track at Tamburello. So it's like, we can't extend the runoff area there. No one thought about putting in a chicane until Senna was killed, unfortunately. And then from that moment on, because those chicanes are, as you say, Ben, they're not really big braking zones. So it's very hard to overtake there except on the first lap, unless you have a tyre offset. And that's why Imola has gone from so good for overtaking to so bad, even though it's still a really demanding track that the drivers love.
It is. It's a lovely part of the area of the world as well, isn't it, Mark? Because the food and drink on offer when you're there at Imola is actually a lovely place to be, isn't it?
Well, I think Italy in general is pretty good for that. But yeah, you're right. It's scenic. It's beautiful. It's old school. It's got this sort of up and down nature, almost like a piece of ribbon flowing through the area. It is surrounded by beautiful countryside. But I think, like Andrew said, it's gone from one of those tracks that really it's all about today. And today is going to be a really exciting day, both for the drivers, because they love letting loose on a circuit like this for a all-out qualifying lap to see what they can get out of it. And I think for us as spectators, it's also really going to be a real highlight to see who can thread it through this circuit and get everything right. It's about getting details really accurately nailed through here. If you get it wrong, there are gravel traps, there are concrete walls, there's all sorts that can really bite. It's not one of these new modern circuits where you've got acres of runoff areas, so you get it wrong and it hurts you, but you get it right, and I imagine it's the most amazing feeling as a driver.
And Andrew, also when they go out for qualifying, when Q1, when you've got all 20 cars heading out there, they've got a decent amount of time, but they'll all want to run at the end of that session to try and get the lap in. It could be chaos out there, couldn't it?
Yeah, because it's actually a relatively short lap, and Alex Albon, the Williams driver, was saying yesterday that when the tracks are less than a certain amount of distance, about 5 kilometres, he said, there's literally not enough space over the entire lap to get all the cars on the circuit at the gaps that the drivers want between each other. So they want between 5 and 6 seconds to run the sort of optimum performance, because obviously any closer than that to the car in front, you lose downforce. But you can't do that. So there is going to be traffic jams, and there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be controversy as a result. Just on this part of Italy, I would describe it as a connoisseur's part of Italy. It's not that well appreciated in terms of holidaymakers. It's not the Amalfi Coast or Rome or the Italian lakes or the Alps or whatever. But there's some lovely rolling countryside, and I've stayed there many times in a lovely town about half an hour to the south of Imola, and there's a beautiful drive over the hills past vineyards. I think you may have been there as well, Ben. It's just, you can't really go. There's not a lot of excitement, but Bologna's renowned for its cuisine. Obviously Maranello, where Ferrari are from, and Modena, where Lamborghini and Alfa Romeo are from, are down the road. And it's just a really lovely part of the world just to go and relax and just savour the delights of life.
Yeah, I agree. It is, absolutely. And it's the first European Grand Prix of this 2025 season. We're just watching Franco Colapinto out on circuit right now. As we mentioned, he's back in Formula One, having raced for Williams for part of last year. Now he's taken over from Jack Doohan at Alpine. He did a reasonable job yesterday. In fact, in the second practice session, he was getting in the way a little bit of other drivers, but actually he was being told by his race engineer, I gather, stay in front, use DRS, whatever you need to do, just stay in front, and it was up to them. And it was, that's part of the job, and he was obviously playing and learning how to deal with the car.
Yeah, and it was a big learning curve for him yesterday. He spent a bit of time in the simulators, of course, in preparation for this weekend, but there's nothing really like getting behind the wheel of the actual car on a real racing track in a competitive weekend. These things all add up to all the significant differences he's got to get used to. I thought he did a good job yesterday. And the really encouraging thing for him will be that his now teammate in Pierre Gasly was able to deliver a really good lap time. He knows that this car can work around this racetrack and can deliver something, you know, really quite competitive. So knowing that he's got that will give him some encouragement to see that he's now just got to start working on himself, building up his confidence and getting closer and closer to it. So he's come in at a very good time, I would say, in that he's got an opportunity here to really shine.
I do agree with that. We're riding with Pierre Gasly at this stage, who put in, as I mentioned earlier, that very good lap. He was third fastest in FP2 yesterday. He was sixth fastest in FP1. So he's been showing good pace throughout the weekend so far. Whether that will continue into qualifying a little bit later today, we shall find out. He has qualified, well, once or twice this year, but it's not always a consistent car. He's just done a good first sector, though. So this is a good opening lap for Pierre Gasly. There is something about him that at Imola, he really seems to fit in very, very well with this track. Let's just watch him going through the left-hander, plunging downhill towards Acqua Minerale. Quick through the first part, and then braking harder for the second part. Try not to run wide. He does that nicely. It's
actually really nice and tidy so far, I have to say. He's right on the limit, but not over it. Coming into this final chicane where it caught a lot of people out, particularly Charles Leclerc yesterday. Reasonably tidy through there, right on the limit of the gravel trap, but not dipping into it. Gets the power down, runs all the way down to this final couple of corners now, and then he'll close out the lap and we'll get a lap time. Again, nice and tidy through the final two corners. Blast on the throttle past the pit lane entry, and he'll head towards the line, cutting the corner as much as he dare to save lap time. And it's a 1:16.6, which does put him at the moment top of the timesheets, ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Yeah, well, Lewis is on another good lap, so we shall see if that stays. But again, it does show that Pierre Gasly is going well here at the moment, and the Alpine is working. His teammate, Franco Colapinto, hit the curve a little harder just then, didn't he? And he held control of the car, but yeah, when you bounce it that much, that's not such good news. Yeah, the curbs here are really quite aggressive, certainly in places around this track. And actually, although the temptation is to really use those curbs to cut the corner and save lap time, some of them are so high that actually they can do exactly that. They can both launch the car, which unsettles it, and that can destabilise things, but it can also actually put undue stress through suspension and tyres, and actually can cause you mechanical problems.
So Ben, Hamilton has just gone fastest, as we were saying. He looked like he was going to, and I just wanted to run something that Hamilton said yesterday past Mark. He was talking after the session. They only do one interview, the drivers, this sort of pool interview by Formula1.com, Formula 1 management interviewers, and he was talking about he had a problem in the second session with the brakes, as we heard him talking about on the radio. And he said it was a small change that shouldn't have made any difference, but did. But then he was asked, is it the transition from one brake manufacturer to the other? And he interrupted the questioner and said, no, it's not the transition, it's the performance of... And then his voice tailed off. And they didn't ask him, well, performance of what? But they did ask him if it was fixable, and he said, it's a lottery. We will roll the dice. We put one on and it works, put another one on and it doesn't. Now, it sounds to me, I don't know what you think, Mark, it sounds like they're having a problem with the consistency of the brakes. So one set of brakes works and one set of brakes doesn't. Yeah, and I've had that before. You know, that's not an uncommon thing. It's like anything. These things are sort of, I mean, I say mass-produced. They're not really mass-produced, but they're produced in large batches for each team, and they should all be identical in terms of everything should be measured exactly the same. They're checked with micrometers, so they should be identical, and the performance should also match that. But just occasionally, you do get, it's like the same with tyres. We actually get this occasionally with tyres, where you'll put one set of tyres on, you'll swap them for another set of exactly the same compound, and a driver will report that it feels completely different. And what you have to remember is that these things are sort of chemical compounds. They're mixtures of material, both tyres and brakes the same, mixtures of compounds that are bonded and formed together to create this product, which should deliver a certain level of performance when it reaches certain temperatures under certain conditions. Very occasionally, it feels like those mixtures of compounds, those chemicals that are mixed, just produce something that in the fine temperature windows we're talking about can actually change the way they behave. And it doesn't take much. I mean, we're talking about the finest margins, but for a Formula 1 driver on the limit who needs absolute consistency when you hit those brakes, you need to know exactly what it's going to do at the certain temperatures they're in, when there's certain corners and certain loads they go under. And if they don't deliver that every single time, it absolutely
absolutely messes with the driver's confidence. And I heard that interview, Andrew, that you're referring to. Lewis just felt like he was almost lost, or at a loss, along with the team, as to what to do. Talking about it's a bit of a lottery, they're going to keep their fingers crossed, is not the way you want to go into a Saturday.
No, absolutely, I agree with that. You're listening to Oscar Piastri right now as he's on a quick lap. Not the fastest of all in the first sector, but he's on a good lap. Hamilton is still fastest, having done that time on the medium compound tyre. Interestingly, Ollie Behrman's popped up to second on the soft tyre, and some other unexpected drivers are up there at the moment. Liam Lawson is third, Pierre Gasly fourth, Charles Leclerc down in fifth. Piastri on a lap, but also Max Verstappen, and Max has just set the fastest first sector of anybody. Both are using the medium sector tyre, so we shall see how this goes. The medium tyre is working well around here, and it is going to be a crucial tyre for the race itself. They're going to have to run it in the race along with the hard compound, but it is delivering some decent laps. Verstappen, second sector, not quite as quick as Piastri's. Does look as though Piastri may well challenge Lewis Hamilton's time. Let's just see, 1:15. Yes, he just by 33 thousandths of a second he does it.
Yeah, so not a lot between those two, which I guess is a surprise at the moment. Verstappen pips the pair of them by a quarter of a second. This is the medium tyre, as you said. It's probably the tyre they're likely to start tomorrow's Grand Prix on. It's going to give them a little bit more start line performance. As Andrew said earlier, it seems quite durable, so it will go a decent stint into this race. I think the worry that a number of people around the sport will have ahead of tomorrow is that this sort of desperation that might be just bubbling under the surface of everybody trying to keep to a one-stop strategy could potentially mean that we get quite a slow-paced first stint to eke these tyres out enough so that you can get away with the one stop, hold your position, because it's difficult to overtake. A bit of defensive driving can do that for you. Doesn't always make the most exciting race though, so we'll see. It could also provide an opportunity for someone willing to gamble who may not be in the top few cars to throw a dice and chuck in a set of soft tyres and go for a two-stopper at some point. So there are options available, and that's, I think, the one glimmer of hope we're going to have to hang on to here.
No, I agree with that. That's absolutely right. Lando Norris is on a good lap. He is challenging Verstappen's new fastest time, but he goes second by 0.077. So Piastri is the one who's lost out to both Verstappen and Norris on this occasion, because, as you said, he's a quarter of a second down. That's a bigger chunk off for Piastri from Verstappen and Norris. But it does look to me, again, a bit like yesterday, as though the track, every time the cars are going round, is cleaning up a little bit more, getting a little quicker.
And it will do exactly that. I think... just seeing a replay of Lawson as he throws it in, and he runs very, very wide. Here he is on the radio.
We went quite wide. It's in 9, so just check the flow. Right hand side.
Yeah, it's just because he ran over the curbs. He was actually okay and kept the wheels out the gravel, but the curbs are really serrated and quite aggressive there, and he did bounce the floor over it, and they can do massive damage. The one thing I was going to say about these laps that we're seeing right now, there's a caveat that we should just point out. They're all on the medium tyre, which will not be the tyre that we see the fastest laps in qualifying happen on, and yet they're going for sort of almost qualifying simulations here. So they're trying to get the driver in the groove, getting the fastest lap possible, but it's not the tyre they're going to do it on later. What you can see, the natural assumption is to say, well, you put a soft tyre on, you're just going to do what you do now, but go a little bit quicker. And that does happen for lots of people. But you also get a little bit of a swing sometimes between certain cars working better on certain compounds than others. So it's not just always linear in that all of these lap times will step up by a quarter of a second when you put a soft tyre on. You might find that a Ferrari in the hands of Lewis Hamilton either works better or worse on a soft tyre. Maybe a Lando Norris in a McLaren, maybe not so good. So it can change a little bit from compound to compound.
We're listening to Alex Albon at the moment in the Williams, who's putting together a pretty good lap. It's not going to be challenging for the fastest speed of everybody, but it is a neat lap, and he's driving it nicely. Alonso has just gone 7th quickest, by the way. Verstappen still on top from Norris, Piastri, Hamilton in 4th, Behrman in 5th, Tsunoda is 6th, Alonso, as I say, up into 7th, Lawson currently in 8th, Gasly is 9th, and Charles Leclerc in 10th. Alex Albon's just about to go across the line. He goes 7th now, a fraction ahead of Fernando Alonso. He's on the medium tyres, but the Williams car is looking good here. Teammate Carlos Sainz is also on a lap, so we will be watching him as well, and he's about to complete the lap himself. Let's just see where he goes. Yeah, he goes into 7th place.
I think that was a reasonably encouraging lap from Alonso in that it was done on the hard tyre, and he's right in the mix of the sort of Williams on the medium tyre, Tsunoda in the second Red Bull also on the medium tyre. So that's actually a good lap, I think, a good solid lap, but also a nice indication of how that tyre performs compared to the medium tyre, given that most people haven't used it yet. So everyone will take a good look at that and be learning something from it.
That's a very good point, yes. Alonso, he's been pushed down a couple more, but as you say, it's still an impressive performance that he's done. Never took pole here, even though he won here that in a crucial race in 2005. He was actually second on the grid here on that occasion. He coming into the final couple of left-handers, he was taking it fairly steady. We're just looking at a replay.
Yeah, I mean, the Ferrari on the last corner. Both Ferraris, they think they are alone on track, always.
Oh, yeah, copy, yeah, we saw that, yeah.
He's talking about Charles Leclerc, who was kind of in his way as he accelerated out of the last corner.
He was really in his way. Leclerc was coming into the pit lane. Alonso was flat out coming through that final corner, and actually it was reasonably close in terms of the incident. Isaac Hadjar just popped up into P1 right now on the medium tyre, so that's a decent lap from him at 1:15.5. I think we're going to see this get really close. As you said, the lap times are going to continue to fall as more rubber goes down as the session builds into qualifying later on this afternoon, particularly when we get those soft tyres running later. More and more of that soft rubber getting down onto the circuit, increasing grip, lowering the lap times, but it's going to be mighty close. Nailing everything and making the fewest mistakes is probably what's going to determine your grid position here.
Absolutely, but that is an impressive lap by Hadjar, Isaac Hadjar. 15, as you say, 1:15.5 on the medium tyre. It's not like he's gone onto the soft tyre compared to those others around him. So Leclerc's second, Verstappen now has been pushed down to third. I am impressed with what Hadjar's done, although Verstappen is currently going quicker again in the first sector, and we're keeping an eye on George Russell, who may well pop up, not as high as I thought actually. He goes 7th fastest, George Russell, and the Mercedes was looking pretty competitive yesterday, but at the moment it's not showing quite that same level of pace. If you do want to synchronise with anything you're watching on screen, we've got 34 minutes and 32, 31 and 30 seconds still to go in this FP3 before we get into qualifying later. But we're now listening to Max Verstappen's Red Bull, and he's fastest in both of the first two sectors.
Yeah, really good lap so far. Nice and tidy he goes through the final couple of left-hand corners, flat out towards the line now, and he crosses the line. He does go quicker, so it's a decent margin, nearly 4/10 quicker than the Racing Bulls of Isaac Hadjar. So that's a good lap from Verstappen. We often see a big step between Friday and Saturday for Verstappen in that Red Bull. They tend to run their engines at much higher power modes when it comes to Saturday ahead of qualifying than they do in the practice sessions of Friday. That's about saving the longevity of those engines without running them to maximum performance when they don't need to. Whereas other teams around them, notably McLaren, which is always why it's a difficult comparison on a Friday, McLaren tend to run their engines at a much higher mode on the Friday in the practice sessions, so we don't get quite the same step. Norris is, though, going quicker, around about the same pace. They had a very good middle sector. There's nothing in it really between them, so this lap's going to really be right on a par with Verstappen and set the pace, I think, for this session so far. He's coming through. He's got 2 or 3 corners left to go. Nice and tidy, runs right out to the edge of the curve. He's really on it now, Lando Norris. Flat out towards the line now. We're going to get a time. It's going to be very close, and it's just over a 10th behind Max Verstappen, so not quite able to match his Red Bull rival at this point.
Final sector wasn't quite as quick, but Lando Norris is still close. It's Max Verstappen, though, who is fastest, and that's the fastest of the weekend so far. 15.2 was the fastest yesterday by Piastri. We're looking at a replay of George Russell. Listen.
Quite a bit of bounce in turn 5. Not lap time limiting, but it was a bit odd.
So he's just reporting the amount of bouncing that he's getting from the car. We've just been looking at a little bit of a replay. He certainly wasn't hitting the curbs, on the exit a little bit, but through the corner, he was actually slightly off the apex.
Yeah, he was, yeah, so not entirely comfortable. That bouncing he's talking about, which seems to be a familiar thing with Mercedes over the years generally, hasn't it? The sort of car bouncing or porpoising, as it was often called, where you have to run these cars so low, and even yesterday we saw a lot of people talking about it bouncing off the floor It's not the smoothest of racetracks. The curbs are very, very high, so it's really easy to unsettle the car around this track. So that's something that's hampering George Russell. I'm going to be really interested actually to see, I might start looking into it at the end of this session, just what changes people might have made overnight, because that step from Verstappen and some of the others that have taken leaps up towards the McLaren pace, yes, the temperature's dropped, I think, a little tiny bit since the start of this session, but not really until we get into race situations does that normally become the big advantage for McLaren that it often is when the temperatures are higher. But I think what we saw yesterday was people like Pierre Gasly in the Alpine seemingly running quite low downforce to get the maximum top speeds, and over a lap that can really help you. In race stint that becomes quite tricky to look after tyres, but because of everything we've talked about already in this session, it being so difficult to overtake, it may be there's been a slight shift in philosophy where it really is just all about getting to the front. If someone like Max Verstappen or a Charles Leclerc or George Russell, if they can stick it on pole today, they might have a very good chance at holding those McLarens back, even though they might be faster in the race when it comes to tomorrow.
Carlos Sainz has just gone over the line, and he is currently 7th fastest in the Williams. Max Verstappen fastest from Lando Norris. Isaac Hadjar in 3rd place. Charles Leclerc in 4th. Oscar Piastri, the championship leader, is currently 5th. Lewis Hamilton, a former winner here at Imola, in 6th place. Then we've got the 2 Williams. They're being consistent in the top 10. Carlos Sainz 7th. Alex Albon 8th. Then Yuki Tsunoda, teammate to Max Verstappen. He is some 9/10 of a second away from his teammate at this stage. 10th place is George Russell. 11th place, Oliver Behrman. And Behrman again showing good pace in the Haas that Ocon is struggling with. Ocon was not happy yesterday, talking about how the car was feeling. He actually felt there might have been an issue with his car. And Hadjar has just had a little bit of a moment getting back on. Sorry, it's Lawson, yes, it's his teammate Liam Lawson who's had that, and he thankfully has got back onto the track.
We haven't seen what happened, but that was at Tamburello, which was the same corner that Hadjar crashed at yesterday at the end of P2. So looks like the Racing Bull car isn't either the drivers or the car itself are not handling that corner very well at the moment. He's
also dragged an awful lot of grass and dust and gravel onto the circuit, which just from the little clip, we haven't seen the replay, as Andrew said, but it's caused quite a bit of debris onto the track at that point.
Yeah, but he's driving the car back, and hopefully all okay. So let's have a little look at the replay here of Liam Lawson. Where did he get it wrong? He gets into the first part of the chicane okay. Second part, clips the curb. And actually, it is the same place, isn't it, as yesterday. There was a problem for his teammate.
It's almost exactly the same incident. He clips the curb, I think, a little bit too heavily, which unsettles the car. He says he's okay, and he is bringing the car back. But yeah, the cars are running so stiff, the suspension's so stiff, they're so low to the ground that just by clipping that curb, it raises the car off the ground. As it comes back down, it bounces and unsettles it. It just lowers the grip level that the rear of the car has, and it swings around like a pendulum. Fortunately for him today, he didn't hit the wall like it did with his teammate yesterday, but he certainly destroyed a set of tyres and the lap that he was on.
Yeah, I imagine what's happening is the car's just losing downforce because the floor's just too high off the ground when they hit the curb that hard. It's not necessarily the car's fault. It's just the way these cars work. But it can be that some cars are more sensitive to that loss of downforce at whatever ride height he was at than others.
Interesting. So Isaac Hadjar, his teammate, has done a very good lap, 3rd fastest at the moment. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen's just set a fastest first sector. He is the quickest already in this session. Remember, we've got just under half an hour still to go in this session, and Verstappen looks as though he's going to take the lead a little further above everybody else. George Russell just going over the line. He is currently 5th fastest. Pretty much everybody on the medium compound tyres at this point. Nobody yet on the softs. That's going to come right at the end of this session, I would think. We're riding on board with Max Verstappen now, so let's see whether he goes into the 1 minute 14s. Can we get into the 1 minute 14s? Nearly, but not quite. No, it's a 1:15.078, but still the fastest that we've seen this weekend.
Yeah, really quick, tidy lap. What he talked about yesterday was struggling with sort of mid-corner balance, just getting the car balanced midway through the corner. From looking at the onboard from that lap that he's just done there, it does look like that has improved because he was really under control through some of the really fast changes of direction. So things have definitely improved for Verstappen and Red Bull overnight. Great work from the team, as I said, step up in probably engine and power unit performance today, but actually things looking like they're coming together when it matters, which is so often the case with Red Bull on a Saturday.
So Gasly's just done another lap, but on soft tyres, which I think will have done a lot of laps now, so he's not actually showing particular performance. Lewis Hamilton, he's out on a lap, done a better first sector than he's done previously, and we're just having a look from on board with Lewis now as he comes up towards the outer chicane where, and he's actually backed off. He wasn't happy.
He wasn't happy because on the way into that chicane he had to take 2 bites at the steering wheel. He didn't get the right turn in, and it cost him. And unfortunately, on a lap like this, on a circuit like this, you don't get 2 bites at the cherry. I mean, you can get through the corner, but it's not going to deliver the lap time. So I think he's backed out with enough of the lap to cool things down and potentially go again. There's still 26 minutes on the clock, but yeah, not sure why that happened. Did he turn in too early? Did he get a tiny bit of understeer or something that he wasn't expecting? Was it this braking issue that he wasn't able to get the car slowed down in the way that he hoped to when he jumped on the pedal? But he is going again. Yeah,
he has picked it back on again. So let's see if he gets it a clear lap now. There could be an opportunity for him to improve on his 7th place currently. Alex Albon on a decent lap again for Williams, and he's currently 8th in the championship. He's scored 30 points so far this year. He's finished 5th on a couple of occasions already this year. It's definitely a big improvement for the Williams team, and I've spoken to a few people who are very happy to see Williams back up there nearer the front order than it's been as a team for quite some time. Yeah, he's gone quicker again. He's gone 6th fastest. That's a good effort.
Yeah, it's a team that's sort of definitely in transition, but heading in the right direction at the right time. They're gearing up towards the major changes coming into this sport next year with entirely new cars, new rules around the technical side of this sport. Massive shift, and it gives a huge opportunity for those who have got their sort of organisations in the right order, who've got the technical organisation, the technical structure right, and that's exactly what's happened. They've changed the management. They've got James Vowles now running that team, and he's literally rebuilding it from the ground up. Not so worried about results over the last couple of years and this year as well. Really focused on 2026 and 2027, and they hope and expect, by the way, to be right up challenging towards the front, which is not where we've seen Williams for quite a few years.
We're just looking at a replay of Lewis when he did that sort of double turn that you mentioned, and then that frustration from him. He didn't go actually off the track, but he had to back out halfway through the corner, and that cost him the lap.
The car was really bouncing, under braking on the way into that corner. I think that's partly what he might have been talking about. It was juddering, it was bouncing, it was unsettled. Really what you want is a jump on the brakes, everything to happen smoothly but quickly, get the car slowed right down to the speed you need to then have one clean, smooth turn into the corner, and he didn't get any of those things, and I think that's why he ended up backing out to sort of reset and have another go.
It's interesting you say that, because we had a replay of Charles Leclerc going through there a moment ago, and actually the car jumped a little bit, but I thought it stabilised beautifully well. It's fascinating how hard you hit those curves makes such a difference, and obviously the suspension response of the car when it's lifted and then drops, quite often it holds it very well, but if you hit it a bit too hard, then it can't.
Yeah, there's such fine margins, isn't it? But I think particularly in this modern era of Formula One, where the car's just really not very compliant. It's so stiffly sprung, it's so low to the ground. You kind of got one very clear line through a corner, and anything deviating from that is a massive compromise, and changes lap time enormously. So you've got to be so precise. These guys are very, very good at it, but you're going at the speeds they're going at. It doesn't take much to get it just off, and that can really affect you.
And that's down to the sheer amount of downforce that modern Formula One cars have now, of course, isn't it?
And the way it's produced.
Amount.
And the way that downforce is produced, which is from the underside of the car much more than it used to be from the over the top, from the wings. You need to get the maximum impact of the downforce created underneath the car. You need that car to be running very, very low, and to have it in this sort of flat horizontal plane for as much as possible. Imagine in your own road car, when you come up to a roundabout and jump on the brakes, the whole thing lurches forward, doesn't it? It changes its trajectory or its angle. The same thing in physics, of course, happens with a Formula One car, but the suspension is so stiffly sprung because they want it to try and remain level at all times, because that's where you generate maximum downforce.
Listening to a practice start from Isaac Hadjar out of the pit lane. Oh, listen.
Yeah, I didn't see the Williams.
He had to brake.
Yeah, sorry about that mess.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking at a replay from Carlos Sainz, and thankfully he did realise just in time, because otherwise there would have been contact on the exit of the pits.
Yeah, it's one of those situations really where, yes, the driver should have been looking in his mirrors, and he clearly wasn't, but perhaps the team also could have let him know that there's a car coming down the pit lane as well. So a little communication lapse, I'd say.
I agree with that. The team should have been a bit aware. They should have been telling him there is someone coming down the pit lane, I would have thought, but who knows. So Verstappen is currently fastest, from Lando Norris in second. Isaac Hadjar with that impressive third fastest. All of these times have been set so far on the medium compound tyres. We will be seeing this new C6 Pirelli coming out again later on, I think, in this session, where we'll probably get them all running at one time, and to see how much that improves the lap times, because interestingly they've already gone quicker than yesterday on the medium tyre. It looked to me as though probably the C6 is worth, what, 3-4 tenths of a second, maybe even half a second in terms of against the medium.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's going to be quite interesting. If we do see them come out at the end of this session, we'll get a direct comparison, which we didn't really get yesterday because we haven't seen this tyre before. Almost all of the running was done on the C6, the soft compound tyre, yesterday. So if we do get some of the top runners coming out on the soft tyre now at the end of this session, we will get a direct comparison. And of course, that's exactly what they want to see as well. What is the sort of delta between the two? How much performance can you gain by simply bolting on a set of soft tyres? It's critical information, and we don't yet have the answer.
No, absolutely, but that will come along with 21 minutes still to go in this session. And at the moment for Mercedes, Kimi Antonelli down in 13th place. George Russell is currently in 6th. It's interesting, actually, because Antonelli doesn't seem to have done particularly quick laps when he's gone sort of qualifying laps this weekend, but he was pretty rapid on race pace yesterday, so I'm just sort of wondering whether he's playing with things a little bit.
No, he just didn't put his lap together on the qualifying sim yesterday, but you're right, his race simulation was very strong. So in fact, it was interesting, the race simulations yesterday, because the McLarens were quick, as you would expect, but Leclerc was also quick in the Ferrari, and Antonelli wasn't very far behind. Verstappen was by contrast struggling, but I mean, I don't know about you two, but to me this looks like Red Bull are very much on it from the start of today, and they've changed that car overnight or turned the engine up or whatever it is, and he looks like he's absolutely in the game.
You're listening to Kimi Antonelli right now because we're seeing some onboard footage. The Italian driver who's got a lot of friends and family here this weekend, and you know, an Italian racer has never taken pole position here. I'm not sure that he's quite going to be in the position to do that. There've been winners, Riccardo Patrese, Elio De Angelis, they've taken victories here at Imola over the past history of this track, but Antonelli, it will be a massive thing for him. Oh, I thought he was going to run a bit wide there, but he got away with it.
Like that. No, he's just gone off into just dipped a wheel into the gravel. He still continues, but that's cost him a lot of time.
There was a famous incident many years ago that sort of illustrated the power of Ferrari and the Italian consciousness compared to Italian drivers. So in 1983, Riccardo Patrese was driving for Brabham, and he was leading in the closing stages of this race, what was called the San Marino Grand Prix then, and Patrick Tambay, a Frenchman in a Ferrari, was behind him. Now Tambay was driving the number 27 car, which was the car that Gilles Villeneuve had been driving. He was an absolute legend for Ferrari from 1978 to 1982 when he was killed.
And that's why we've still got the name Villeneuve on one of the corners here.
Yeah, exactly, and why the Canadian flag is painted on the third place grid position, which was where Villeneuve qualified for his final race at Imola, which was his final race in Formula 1 full stop in 1982. Anyway, so Patrese took the lead from Tambay in the Brabham and crashed Acqua Minerale a few laps later, and the Italian fans all cheered when he went off because it meant that a Ferrari was going to win.
Even though an Italian driver had missed out. Yeah, no, it is fascinating. And of course, as we said, the Italian fans here this weekend, they will certainly be cheering for Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Oh, Russell getting into the gravel. My goodness, I thought he was going to lose it, but he held it.
Yeah, it's both Mercedes drivers. They're on the ragged edge, but it doesn't seem like the car's perfectly under their control at this point. He is on the soft tyre, so he's going for a proper outright qualifying simulation run. But yeah, just stepping over the line again and dipping wheels into the gravel, which is seen quite often now. So it seems like a slightly difficult beast to handle, this Mercedes, in these conditions around this particular circuit. Get it right, and we know it's got some lap time in it because we've seen it yesterday. But I think it seems quite a difficult thing to absolutely nail. It's going to take, as I said before, it's going to take something close to perfection for anybody to put this car on pole, because the gaps are so small and the performance is so close.
There are a few cars going out on the soft tyres, as you said. Now, George Russell onto a set, one or two others going out, so we may start to see some more improvements in the actual lap speed. We're just having a little look at the replay of George Russell when he bounced it over the gravel a bit too much through the outer chicane. He hit the first curve and he dealt with it. Let's listen.
Yeah, right, definitely a bit worse today.
Yeah, do you know, it's exactly the same thing that Lewis Hamilton had. Lewis backed out a little bit earlier in the corner, so didn't continue through that particular chicane, but it's very bumpy on the way in the braking zone, and you could see it from the onboard of George Russell's car there. As he's trying to get the car slowed down, the car's bouncing all over the place. The Mercedes, I think, particularly susceptible to this bouncing and very stiffly and low sprung. So it seemed like it unsettled it, and when he turned in slightly wrong, and it ran him a little bit wide into the gravel, and that's what cost him.
Oscar Piastri's just going on to a flying lap now on the soft tyres, so now we'll start to get a real view of what these cars can do on this new C6 Pirelli tyre, and he's already nearly 0.2 of a second faster in the first sector. Max Verstappen has gone out early, and I think this is wise by both teams, actually, by both McLaren and Red Bull. Yeah, similar first sector, almost exactly the same, because you need to get out. We've still got 16 minutes to go, but there could be incidents. It's worth getting out relatively early.
Yeah, that's right, and there's he's gone wide. Piastri's run wide and I think abandoned that lap,
yeah.
So he'll have to have another go, but that's cost him the freshness of those soft tyres on that first run. The reason this is important, the knowledge gained from this is important, is two reasons. First of all, this is getting the driver into the groove in the car's configuration exactly as it will be when it matters later on this afternoon. But it is also, as you said earlier, getting the delta between this soft tyre and the medium tyre, and the reason that's important is when it comes to qualifying, with the limitation on soft tyres they've got, can any of the front runners get through the early parts of qualifying on a medium tyre? This information will be crucial to that.
Interestingly, Verstappen's not gone quicker in the second sector. Let's just see how his third sector goes. No. Now, does that mean, because yesterday this new C6 tyre was actually holding the whole lap. When we looked at the sector times, it was usually sector 2, sector 3 as well. But right now, it's sector 1 that's quick and then not sector 2 and 3. So is it wearing more quickly?
Well, I was going to say, when you were talking about it earlier, the contrast between the two McLaren drivers that you referenced, Ben, at the start of the commentary, one was quicker in the first part of the lap, one was quicker in the second part of the lap, the last part of the lap, I should say, and that'll be because they're choosing to manage their tyres differently over the course of the lap, because you won't be able to push flat out on this ultra soft tyre, the C6, for an entire lap. Now, I wonder whether Piastri's moment at Acque Minerali there was because he'd pushed a bit too hard in the first sector. The car looked incredibly fast. Some of the Albon's also not improved on the soft just there. So some of the camera angles were absolutely stupendous on that Piastri lap. It looked so fast through those first chicanes.
We're getting a replay.
And then he just asked a bit too much of the car going into Acque Minerali, which is a really difficult corner. You're braking and turning into that corner, downhill into a compression and then up again, and then it comes back on itself on the exit. Pirelli tyres don't generally like turning and braking at the same time anyway, and also we're seeing Verstappen also had a moment on the Variante Bassa on his lap. So yeah, I wonder, you're right, maybe they've tuned the cars in a bit more, and they just haven't quite found that balance on the soft tyre yet as to exactly how to manage it, where to take it out towards the limit but not too far towards the limit in the first part of that lap. Let's see, Lando Norris crosses the line and does go faster on his soft tyres.
That's interesting. I think, yes, Lando has worked it perhaps a little bit more cleverly there, not going too mad on the first sector, but he's kept the tyres up, and it actually has helped him go fastest now.
Yeah, and he actually went slower in the middle sector than Verstappen had gone in the middle sector on that medium tyre, so that could well be exactly as we've been talking about, a bit of tyre management over the course of the lap. But Lando, at the moment, managing to get that about right.
And, of course, the middle sector, that contains Piratella, which is the very, very fast left-hander at the top of the hill, and then Acque Minerali, which is very demanding as a right-hander. So maybe that's where they're needing to manage the tyres.
That's a very good point. We're watching Isaac Hadjar. He's on the softs now. He did that very good lap earlier on the mediums, but he's not as quick in sector 1 as he had done earlier.
Absolutely zero pace left.
Copy.
And that's Yuki Tsunoda who's saying that on the radio as we're watching Isaac Hadjar in the Racing Bulls car. Sector 2 just coming up for him. Let's just see how this goes. But no, he's definitely not as quick. So it's almost as though the medium tyre today, I don't know if it's about the temperature, it's not hugely different to yesterday.
Well, it's going to be, there's a little bit of temperature change, but not very much, like you say. I think it's more going to be that they've done all the running on this in this session on the medium tyre. And as I said earlier, you do get differences in terms of how how each car performs on each compound. Some it will suit and some it maybe not so much. So it's always difficult when you're sort of dialed in on one tyre and then you have to make a switch to the other. But we do know the soft tyre has got great performance. Lando Norris has just shown it. Maybe not as much as we perhaps expected. Piastri can't seem to match it at the moment. He's about 3.5 tenths off his teammate on that soft tyre on that first run. So this is actually quite interesting, and it does mean, as I said earlier, the delta between the medium and the soft tyre, at least now in these conditions and these temperatures, nowhere near as extreme as we thought. And that could give the opportunity for the front runners to perhaps get through the first parts of qualifying on the medium tyre, saving some of those softs if they need to for later on in the afternoon.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc going through into the gravel on soft tyres as well. It does seem to be throwing everybody a little bit more than yesterday when the soft tyres seem to be working very well. It does look as though people are struggling a little bit more with it. Hamilton is on a lap. He's been quicker personally in his first sector, but not in his second sector, and we'll just see as he goes over the line if he improves at all. Well, he stays down in 10th place, 1:15.8 that he has just done. That is his quickest lap actually, but it hasn't improved his time, so really no difference between the two tyres from his point of view. They're having to relearn how to use this soft tyre, where to push it and where to be a bit careful with it.
And I think there's going to be a few heads being scratched up and down the pit lane, because everyone will have assumed you're going to take at least a reasonable chunk, a reasonable step forward just by bolting this on. They have a little bit of time now between qualifying, but not very much, and the last thing you want to do from a mechanical perspective is change too much between this session and the all-important qualifying laps this afternoon, because the driver needs to be comfortable in the car and know exactly what to expect when they get in it.
Also, I don't want to make too many conclusions this early. Obviously, we're still 10 minutes from the end of third practice and there's still qualifying to come, but that Aston Martin in Fernando Alonso's hands that we were talking about earlier, looking quite good on the hard tyre. He's just gone 9th on his soft tyre run, so maybe those upgrades have produce some sort of daylight at the end of the tunnel for Aston Martin.
That's a good point, yeah, and it would be lovely to see Aston Martin delivering a little bit better now. George Russell and Kimi Antonelli are both on track. Antonelli's gone a bit quicker in his first sector than he's gone before, but Russell is not going any faster right now, unless he's saved these tyres right down to the final sector, whereas Antonelli will, in theory, improve on his current 11th place. So let's just see. George Russell will be coming across the line. He is currently 7th fastest, stays in 7th with a slower lap. But behind, Kimi Antonelli coming into the last double left-hander, and then full acceleration as he comes up across the line. And let's just see whether this does improve it for him. Antonelli, yeah, he goes 4th fastest, so actually he has worked those soft tyres better than almost anybody so far. That's a really good lap by him.
It's a really good lap by him. It was an awful lap from George Russell, 1.4 seconds off the pace on the same tyre as those around him. We didn't actually see if there was an issue, but he did certainly complete the lap, which would suggest at least there was something worth aiming for the finish line for. But they're nowhere near as close as we thought they might be. Yesterday, the gaps we were talking about between multiple different teams and drivers were often less than 1/10 of a second. Now we're talking about up to half a second, the gap from the first place down to P4, which is currently Antonelli. So although there's still a lot of time, and this won't be the order and the sort of gaps we'll see when it comes to qualifying, I have no doubt it'll get closer, but it definitely has been a shift. Whether it's the temperature or the conditions this morning, things have changed, and they've changed the pecking order as a result of that.
Well, let's keep an eye on Nico Hülkenberg now. He's all the way down in 19th place currently on a 1:16.4. He's on a set of soft tyres right now. Hülkenberg is a very good qualifier, but he's not always the best at managing tyres. That's not always been his highest skill. He's just very rapid when the tyres are working for him. Let's just keep an eye on this. Meanwhile, of course, Lando Norris is still the man who has set the pace here on the soft tyre. Verstappen is currently 2nd. We're waiting to see if Verstappen's going to be able to improve, but he's in the pits at the moment. Piastri 3rd, Antonelli now up into 4th place, and Hülkenberg a bit quicker than his previous in the 2nd sector, so he's got a chance of moving up from 19th. His teammate Bortoletto is currently 17th, But is there any chance that Sauber, who were showing good pace in free practice 1 yesterday, are actually going to be further up the order? Not much. He's just gone to 17th.
Yeah, that's right. I think towards the top we're unlikely to see too much in the way of further improvement, certainly from the front runners, because of that limitation on tyres. We've seen them have their sort of probably one sole run on the soft tyres in this session. They may continue to use the same set of soft tyres, but that'll have had the best out of them. They need to now save all the remaining new sets for that all-important qualifying hour later on.
But watch Williams. Now, this car, actually, in the end, no signs. I thought he might improve slightly. It was a very similar time to what he'd done before on the mediums, but actually, as you're right, he's lost out again. Well, keep an eye on Albon, because he's done good first and second sectors personally. Albon is currently 9th in the standings. But can he keep the tyres working in this final sector? That's where it went wrong for Sainz. No, same thing. It's not holding together that soft tyre in the final sector, is it?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of learning. And of course, what they can do now is they'll get back into the garages after this session and learn from all of these runs. The data will show exactly where they're losing. They'll have temperatures and pressures, and they'll be able to see those traces around the lap to understand exactly what the driver's doing, what inputs the driver's putting in, and how that's affecting things like tyres and therefore the grip that comes from those. And of course they'll learn and be able to make adjustments to the way they drive the car. But what can also happen, if this is related to a very small shift in temperature, we've got a bit of cloud cover over today, if that shifts even just a small amount...
Oh, Lando, he had an off, but... got it back on. Sorry to interrupt, but that was a bit of a moment for him.
Yeah, he just went in a little bit hot. Couldn't get the car slowed down and straight across the gravel, so that's not ideal for him. But yeah, if the temperature shifts by just a small amount when it gets to qualifying, which is entirely possible it can do, then actually this could swing back again. And all of the learning, it's very difficult, and you've got to judge this very carefully. Making too many changes off the back of this session, which is a couple of hours away from when it really matters later on, could actually send you down the wrong direction.
I'm sort of feeling for you when you were mechanicking for McLaren and knowing when you have a session like this, suddenly in the garage there's a real wind-up for everybody, because suddenly everyone's thinking, my goodness, are we doing the right thing now? Because everyone thought the soft tyre would just gain you 3-4 tenths, maybe a bit more. It's not happening that easily. They may have to completely rethink, as you say, with just a couple of hours to go, really.
Well, they either completely rethink or they trust in their methods and think that, you know, if the temperature is going to shift back, if we are going to get the sun coming out, temperatures raising up a little bit, you know, any small shift like that, they're very clever. They have a huge understanding of how these things work in relation to changes in things like temperatures and humidities. If they trust in the systems, if they trust in the way they've gone down this, they might actually just stick with it and tell their drivers that it'll come back to you.
Hamilton just ran through into the gravel. I thought he'd done it perfectly actually in that first part of the last corner, but he then ran wide through the second part, and it was a bit of a moment. Meanwhile, Piastri is learning how to play these soft tyres a bit more, because his second sector is good, and that actually was a good lap. Okay, he is learning where to push those soft tyres a bit more, I think, on that lap. That was clever by Piastri. He's gone second fastest on tyres that are already done a couple of quick ones.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is the first laps in qualifying 1, as we get into it later on today, are going to be exploratory laps. They're going to have to learn a huge amount in a very short space of time. Does the car feel exactly as it feels right now? And therefore, is this learning that's happening right now, is that all relevant? Are the things they're learning to do about managing the tyres over the course of the entire lap, is that still applicable? Or have things shifted a little bit and they've got to learn very quickly on their feet to be able to deliver when it matters? So it's a game of a sort of shifting set of goalposts at the moment, and they'll have to keep a close eye on that.
Isaac Hadjar just coming over the line. He did a good job earlier, 6th, but hasn't gone quicker on the soft tyres. But it is a fascinating day, this, at the moment. Lewis Hamilton, we're just having a little replay of, because he ran wide, coming through the final Ravanti section. It was the second part. Yeah, he just runs onto the gravel. It was too bad, Rivazza, as he came out. First part, he got that just about perfect on the curb, but the second part of Rivazza just had to correct slightly. It did put him in the gravel. Listen in.
Floor damage.
Taking a look on data.
He got the tiniest snap of oversteer in the second part of the chicane, tiny, and it meant a tiny correction on the steering wheel, which just pushed him wide. Probably by, to give people at home some context here, you're probably talking, it pushed him wide by 10 or 20 centimetres, and that was enough to dip a wheel in the gravel, which of course ruins the lap. cascades the sort of floor of the car over that serrated curb, causing potential damage that you just heard him refer to on the radio there. So it's tiny margins, as we keep saying. It's such small margins between getting this right and wrong around this circuit.
It is, yeah, fascinating to see. Yuki Tsunoda is just picking up a bit of pace now as well. And interesting, Max Verstappen is back out on the soft tyres as well. So we'll see whether the Red Bull have been able to find a little bit more work to make this tyre work. Of course, there are minimum tyre pressures they have to run, and it's very unlikely, with the minimum tyre pressure that Pirelli bring in, it's very unlikely you're going to go beyond that.
That's right. I mean, the minimum, their starting pressures that they are mandated in the regulations that Pirelli set ahead of every race weekend. So the teams all have to adhere to that, and it's monitored and checked by the FIA, of course, as the weekend goes on. We're just watching Tsunoda in the second Red Bull, who had a terrible start to the lap. He had a huge amount of oversteer coming through the very first chicane, so really early in the lap, and massive corrections on the steering wheel. So that's cost his overall lap time. He's continuing, of course, because there is still a lot of learning to be done. The actual lap time here is almost irrelevant to the driver and teams. It's about understanding what every corner is going to bring for you, how your car's going to handle each one of those, and whether you need to make any changes or tweaks before it really matters later on.
I think it's fascinating when you've got a situation like this from a driver point of view. I mean, the great drivers in Formula One in the past certainly was about, in qualifying, was just getting the maximum out of a car. But nowadays, even in a flying qualifying lap, you've actually got to be thinking, where am I overusing the tyre, and where am I got to manage it a little bit? I find that incredible. Let's just listen to Tsunoda.
It's just zero grip.
Yeah, you see, he's saying on the soft tyre he's not getting any grip, and Verstappen's sectors are not good either, are they?
No, you could see it on Tsunoda's lap. It was just messy right from the very beginning, as I said, and Verstappen's lap time half a second off that of Lando Norris as he crosses the line. So that's way too big a gap to, at this stage, to consider himself a major contender. So he's going to have to do some work. We know how good Max Verstappen is, and we know that when things really matter, when the pressure's on, he rarely makes mistakes, and he's able to deliver something from a car that often feels like it shouldn't justify the lap time. If anyone can do it, he can. So at the moment, it's looking like McLaren are in pretty good shape. Everyone else just starting to struggle, but even McLaren not as comfortable as we thought they might be.
Absolutely, and trying to learn how to use these soft tyres. Leclerc's just done a slightly better lap on the soft tyre, working out where to push and where not to push. The Williams cars, which were very effective earlier on, Albon is just going on to another lap now. Sainz is still well up the order. He's in sixth place, sorry. Albon is currently in 9th position. It does look as though potentially both Williams could get up into Q3, depending on how qualifying goes later on. Down at the bottom end of the list, it's interesting that Tsunoda's right down there, actually in 17th. So remember, the slowest 5 in the first part of qualifying will drop out. At the moment, that is the couple of Saubers. It's one of the Red Bulls, surprisingly. It's one Alpine, although both Alpines are not showing the pace that they did yesterday. And Esteban Ocon, consistently one of the slowest here this weekend so far, although his teammate, Ollie Behrman, is currently 12th.
Yeah, and just to caveat everything, as we often do, you know, we still don't know at this point. The cars are sort of free to some extent right now. We don't actually know their fuel loads. We don't actually know their engine modes. What we do know is when we get into qualifying, we know exactly what they're going to try and achieve, and that's the absolute ultimate fastest lap possible. It'll be minimal fuel. It'll be the highest power modes they can find within the settings on board their car. They'll have everything geared up to going as fast as possible. So there is still a possibility here that not everyone's running in exactly the same configuration, and maybe when it comes to qualifying, those gaps start to close up a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think qualifying is going to be very close, as you say, and it's going to be fascinating to see how the teams and drivers actually deal with these soft tyres, which are not showing quite the advantage they were showing in practice yesterday. Let's quickly run you through that order. As the checkered flag has come out, I don't think anyone else is improving now. It's Lando Norris that has set the pace at a 1:14.897. Oscar Piastri, his teammate, a tenth of a second slower. Max Verstappen just a fraction slower than that, but he did it on the medium compound tyre. Kimi Antonelli an excellent 4th in the end. Charles Leclerc Leclerc 5th, Carlos Sainz in 6th place, Isaac Hadjar in 7th position, and George Russell in the Mercedes in 8th place, Albon in the Williams in 9th, and then Lewis Hamilton for Ferrari in 10th. Fernando Alonso just outside the top 10 for Aston Martin in 11th place, Ollie Behrman in 12th place ahead of Lance Stroll, Liam Lawson 14th, Pierre Gasly, who was quick yesterday, struggling a bit more today so far, in 15th, 16th place for Gabriel Bortoleto, 17th for Yuki Tsunoda, who was not happy at how the Red Bull was working for him, Franco Colapinto 18th, Nico Hulkenberg 19th, and at the back once again Esteban Ocon. So that is how the lineup looks at this stage. Max Verstappen still going to be a part of the attack in terms of trying to take pole position, but we shall see. At the moment, there is no doubt that the McLarens are in great shape, with Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri 1 and 2, the other way round from yesterday, but McLaren's showing that tremendous pace here at Imola.
Many thanks to the team there, and there is much more to come from them here on Sports Extra today, and of course on Sports Extra over the weekend, and updates and reports as well, the podcast, it's all there. Welcome back to the Kia Oval, where I am currently looking out on a beautiful sea.